Good.
Okay, welcome today for the presentation on the impact of online academic discourse on motivation and achievement in a self-contained 6th grade classroom. The problem that I had addressed is more than one facet of the problem, actually. Students regularly were dismissing assignments and learning at the end of the day or period. Homework was their only means, really, of the extension, and the quality of homework as a means to actually extend the learning was just limited because they were only interacting with themselves. Occasionally would email each other or myself if they had questions, but as far as actually gaining any learning from the homework, it was just limited. Students often were unaware of how to engage in true academic discourse, meaning the way that they spoke to one another, the way that they let their ideas be known and interacted with one another. Most of the discourse was me asking a question and them responding to that. No real back and forth. There were limited opportunities. Some students were reluctant to engage and participate, so we had to use equity sticks and things like that to get them really interested in it. The lower achievers and the low ELLs were often overshadowed by the higher achieving students, more outspoken, outgoing students. So their ideas were lost, or there was just little or no validation of their ideas. They didn't have those opportunities. For achievement, the assignments and activities were relevant. Students were operating by the mantra, just get it done, so that they could pursue activities of a higher interest. I noticed a lot of my students had actually even expressed kind of like a why bother to answer and discuss when someone who's a higher achiever and more outgoing would answer the questions for them. And so no amount of scaffolding truly did this justice in order to get them to be motivated to raise their hand or give their opinion or state whatever they wanted to state. They just kind of kept it to themselves. So the purpose of the study that was conducted, achievement was predictable. High achievers earned high marks. They responded more to one another during whole class discussions. They were more likely to volunteer. Low achievers earned lower marks. They took kind of a backseat or tuned out. In this quote, given the increasing propensity for learning being offered online and beyond the boundaries of institutions such as schools, there is an ongoing need for students that try to make sense of the way in which students engage with these opportunities. So that's why I chose to use the online discussion board as a research project. It was my goal to identify a platform upon which students can engage beyond the classroom, extend and connect their academic inquiries, and achieve a feeling of confidence and value in their participation, while also addressing the needs for 21st century learning. My primary research question was, in what ways will the engagement of 6th grade students in the online academic discourse impact student achievement in English language arts? In the beginning of the year, last year, I had been kind of investigating different ways to address this, and I found edmodo.com. We started a class thing on that, and it was short-lived. It was almost like a Facebook for students, so it was a little bit more difficult to moderate and make sure that they were keeping within the expectations for discussion on that type of thing. So we dropped that, and I searched and searched for another way in which to do that, knowing that after the experience with the Edmodo, with proper structuring and clear expectations, it had potential. So I wanted to find one that I could actually use for that. Secondary research question being, how will student motivation in ELA discussion be impacted through the use of online academic discourse? And a quote for that is, instructors should seek to develop social presence, avoid becoming the center of discussion, and emphasize student-to-student interactions, all the while encouraging students and discussing that their posts are being read. Definition of terms. Online forum is also known as a discussion board, a discussion group, bulletin board, or web forum. It's different from a blog. Online forum is a discussion area on a website whereby members can post discussions as well as read and respond to posts by other forum members. A forum can revolve around any subject in an online community. Another term is self-contained classroom, a heterogeneous group of students who are included all day in the same academic classroom setting for all subjects. The literature review section had several points. One of the goals of education is to foster the capacity for self-directed learning, a capacity that is both strengthened and complicated by the new resources provided by technology. The use of online discussion groups is a form of active learning. It supplements content delivery, increases understanding of ideas and issues present in class, and offers non-native English speakers the chance or opportunity to take more active roles in debates. And that was a big motivator for me, was getting that active learning and that active discussion going. Students in the 21st century, born digital natives and motivated by technology, can derive some sense and meaning from activities that are rooted in technology through participation in online activities to increase achievement. Educational technology has demonstrated a significant positive impact on achievement as well as on student attitudes towards learning. Technology can enhance students' communication and collaboration, improve quality of instructional activities, especially in science, improve students' organizational skills, enhance student motivation, and promote student autonomous learning. We see that a lot with our students these days, for sure. Online discussion groups require learners to solve problems, work together, examine problems from multiple perspectives, become responsible for their own learning process, and become aware of their role in the instructional process. There's been a few researchers who've conducted studies with elementary level students and middle school level students. Not very many. Mostly were in the high school or college, university level. So it was in response to that, as I was looking at the literature and noticing that there really wasn't a wealth of it, that I definitely decided to pursue this because I think it would add to that. And this is what I thought too. Many children utilize online forums and social media as it is. This will be a perfect opportunity to contribute to a larger body of research in an academic setting. So my participants were 29 sixth grade students. It was a self-contained general education classroom. There were a wide range of differences among students. Among those were their academic levels, English proficiency levels, the genders and ethnicities. Specifically, percentage had 14 male, 15 female, pretty good split down the middle there. Hispanic, Asian, Pacific Islander, African American, special ed, English language learners, and GATE students. Breakdown. So the methods we're going to discuss are intervention, data collection, plan for increasing the validity, and confidentiality. So the methods for intervention, there was a control group and an intervention group. I broke the students in my class up into two equitable groups of different varying abilities, genders, GATE, ELL, everything, male, female, tried to make it as even as possible. Control group was a group that responded face-to-face to questions based on the content topics. The same questions were then in the intervention group used on the discussion board. While the control group was discussing these in class, the intervention group was working on their assignments that would then be the control group's homework. So it was kind of a flip-flop there to just make sure that everybody was doing the same work and that the data that was collected from both groups was viable to actually compare. So prior to the study, both groups were given the same survey, an attitude scale, and a pre-assessment. And then after the study, they were given the exact same things to see how anything changed or any growth that was made. And then during the study, I kept an observation journal. For increasing the validity, there were persistent observations every day using inquiry data, also in the surveys and attitude scales and assessments, the pre and post test, and then triangulating the data to see exactly how all of that worked together. The confidentiality is very, very strict and consistent. It was maintained throughout the entire study. The participants were assigned numbers for identification and not referred to in any way, shape, or form of their name or anything else. My site administrator signed a consent form. The participants' parents all signed consent forms. And then afterward, all identifying documents were shredded and discarded after the study was completed. Triangulating the data included pre- and post-assessments of both groups, the mean gains of both groups, changes in student perception of general discussion, and also changes in students' desire to participate in the online discussion board. So my findings included the assessments. The pre-assessment is in red, the post-assessment is in green. On the left, you'll see the control group students, and on the right, the intervention group students. I want to point out that it was expected that between the pre and post assessment that there would be an increase in overall achievement because, you know, you give the test before and then you give it after. I did not expect this much of a gain from both groups, which is very notable. So let's see, when we look then closer at the mean gains of each group, on the left here is the control group. Mean gains, specifically if you look down toward the bottom, the total point gains of these 15 students was 225 overall. Dividing it by the number of participants, the mean gains for that particular assessment was 15 on average. And then the intervention also had the exact same number of mean point gains, or the total point gains, pardon me, as the control group, but having one less student to add into that to have to consider. So the mean gains for the intervention group was actually a positive 16, so one more point difference for the intervention group there. For the surveys and attitude scales, specifically, I believe these are the attitude scales where the students were given statements that they were to rate. Always, sometimes, or no, vary, somewhat, or not at all. Before the intervention and after the intervention, confidence in their ability to speak in front of the class grew. The yellow is vary, if you want to just look at that. 27% before, 43% after, and 0 not at all after, which was really neat to see. Second question, I enjoy participating in discussions. Went from 29% very much so to 57% very much so. Somewhat went down about 14 percentage points, and not at all again in the after is completely not visible. It's 0%. I like hearing what my classmates have to say about what we are learning. Grew almost double, or a little bit more than doubled, as far as very much so. Feeling my ideas and opinions are important in class discussions. Very significant difference there. And then wanting to know about what others have to say about my ideas and opinions grew immensely. The student desire to participate in online discussion board from the survey, the green line and dots represent before the intervention, and then the same student's response after the intervention is in red. And each time it either stayed the same or it increased for their desire to do that. It really did catch on in the class. It was very refreshing intervention. There was a notable increase overall in student achievement, especially in this ELL subgroup. The intervention group ELLs all achieved proficiency. None of the control group ELs achieved proficiency, but all did improve. Notable increase in student motivation. Discussion quality and preparedness in class was amazing from the students who had participated in the discussion board the night before. They came to class the next day, couldn't wait to talk about it. Whereas the students in class were a little bit more like...
And the proficiency is on the post-test, right?
The post-assessment, yes, yes. Recommendations for future research. Careful consideration must be paid to specific expectations for online student discourse and techniques of developing question prompts. Explicit instructions on how to respond to prompts and how to reply to peers. Teacher must moderate closely and provide feedback. And then a warm-up discussion board activity or two even prior to adding this component to an existing or new unit is highly recommended so the students become accustomed to the way it works. I don't know if there are any other questions.
Just a question. In order for when you make the groups for the ELs and so forth, was it just a random kind of group, or did you strategically
Every
create?
student that was chosen for the intervention and control group was strategic. I needed to have an equitable, a balance between both groups as much as possible. It was a little hard. I'd had 30 students, one of them moved to another school, so then that took that element out, so I had to kind of shift it around a little bit more to keep it consistent. There were some problems too. I didn't put them on here. Some students, seeing as that I assigned it for homework, would have issues such as the computer, technical difficulties, like the computer didn't work or they couldn't get into it for the password or something they forgot, or the internet went out. A parent needed to use it one night for their own homework, so the student couldn't use it, so then we integrated the classroom computers for them in the morning time so that they were able to still finish their assignment. And as far as replying to other students' responses, they had the whole week to reply to each other, rather than tonight go home and reply to the prompt and respond to 3 other students when maybe one student only was able to do it. You know, does that make sense?
Yes.
So that their initial responses were all there, and they had enough time to be able to reply to each other.
So that was going to be my question. How many, like, specific on the assignments, like how much time were they expected to maybe spend online per night or per week?
Per night, I expected them no more than about 20 minutes tops on the homework. For the discussion board, there was also a reading assignment each night, so I didn't want to overwhelm them. You know, just the same amount of homework time as you would expect for any other type of assignment.
You know, I'm just curious. You know, what things do you take away as far as an instructor in the classroom, as far as strategies in helping students with second language challenges? You know, did you find that maybe the students who had limited English as far as their typing and reading, you know, were they more encouraged or felt more safe to respond, you know, via a computer than they would, you know, verbally?
Right.
And
I did notice. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and then you know, what is that then? You know, kind of as a teacher, you know, in the future, how to make some of those changes to increase that or modify that to allow for student success.
Right. Well, I think for the lower ELLs especially, it was challenging at first, definitely. But it did make, like, one of the pieces of research that I found, and I found it to be true, was that the discussion board, being able to type it and take that time to really think about the answer and how you're going to phrase it, they have that, whereas in a face-to-face discussion, you don't have that time. If somebody asks you a question and you sit there, all you have is this. You can't look anything up. I mean, students were able to look things up and ask questions if they do have those resources at home, or if they call their friends or whatever to ask. But at first, her my lowest EL, her responses, they were very dry. And I teach the students every year how to respond to a question, use part of the question in the answer, and then you finish answering. All of her responses were just like that in the first 3 or 4 days. And after that, she began to add a little bit more. It was a voice in her responses and replies, and it was really nice. And then in class, to see her, while I'm working with the discussion control group, the intervention group was working on their other assignments, and they were allowed to converse, and hearing those types of conversations and the quality that they had in class while they were finishing their assignments, not only on topic, but very, very colorful and participating, not just sitting there like she used to do. She was really nice.
Did you notice in the discussion boards, was there any improvement in the quality of their discussions, the length, and then also probably kind of the grammar piece that could be read into?
Right. The grammar overall didn't improve very much on the discussion board. It stayed steadily about the same. But as far as the length and the quality, after the first few days or so, it picked up a little bit more. Like, they became a little bit more comfortable with it. They were a lot more comfortable, I believe, with their expectations. So they were able to respond. But most of them adhered to the minimum requirements. There were maybe 1 or 2 times that students went beyond that and added a few more comments or replies to other students, rather than just the one that they were required to do. But I think that could take an instructor encouraging that, just saying, by the way, or there can be extra credit if you do this, or somehow enticing them too, because when it did happen, it was absolutely organic, as far as they just did it themselves, and it was natural for them to do, and it ended up with a really good discussion quality.
Ask, did any of the discussions ever kind of either take a turn or take a surprising perspective that you weren't expecting from the students?
Yeah, well, not necessarily. They were really good about staying on task after the first or second day. First or second day, I had 2 kids reply to their peers' responses with things like, "What's up, bro?" and "I like pot," just being goofy, and we had already discussed the expectations, but okay, we just need to remind them about this. It's like they didn't know really what to do, but I have to reply to another student, so this is what I'm going to say. But after that, they got it a lot more. But nothing really went out of the expected type of thing, because I wasn't really sure how in depth it would get. So the time that it did go out of my expectation in that respect was the student who replied to, who was really excited about that day's topic, and he replied to more than one person. Very insightful.
As far as the discussions groups and so forth, how much time did that have to take away from, the amount of time that you had to spend monitoring that? Did that allow, was that a good balance between your other responsibilities too, or?
In the in-class discussions? Or
yeah, like just the overall, monitoring the discussion groups and posing the questions and so forth. Did you feel that time spent as the instructor was valuable time and moved it forward, or maybe what other things would you adjust to make sure that maybe you could use that time more effectively?
Okay, so in preparing for that, it did take a lot of extra time, because I didn't want to have a lot of questions that required simple yes or no answers. I was really trying to tap into that higher order thinking that could come out of it. So that part of it, was a little bit more time consuming, definitely worth it. It was, like I said, after the first few days when the students started becoming more accustomed to it and knew what their expectations were, knew I was reading it. Even though I wasn't really participating in the discussion, I didn't want to do that. What was I doing with that? Yeah, just the time that it took was definitely worth it. I lost my train of thought. Okay. Well, thank you, Jose. Thank you, Michelle. And thank you, Stuart, for being here to participate today. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms.
Mhm.